Hey, Callie.
Hey,
How's it
Jolene.
going?
Good. I'm doing good today. How are you?
Good, good. I'm dying to know who we're talking to this week.
Well, this week we're talking to one of my favorite ladies. I know we say that stuff a lot, but I love all the people that we have had conversations with on this podcast. I'm so excited to be able to introduce them to other people. So we're going to be talking with Sandy Bartlett today, and she is a women's empowerment and confidence coach. And let me tell you, I have watched Sandy go through, a couple of shifts and pivots in her business, just like we all do.
Yeah.
And, one thing that she has always been bringing to the surface is, the importance of confidence and kind of self-awareness almost in who we are as a person and how we thrive. And she is really honing in on just exactly how she's going to use her unique background and experience to help other women find that confidence. So I am so excited to share her with our audience today.
Me too. And I think that it has a lot to do with it coming from within. And she talks about her own, she's able to overcome things and bring it out in everybody else. And I think that's just something so beautiful. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's just go right into it. Hi there, villagers. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Jolene, and this is the Success Through Community podcast,
where we believe that solopreneur success really does take a village.
I see it really as the lifeline.
It's been essential in getting my business to where it is today.
We're talking with women just like you who know that the secret to their success is their community.
Have you found your village yet? Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're so excited to have you on the show and just to give our listeners a little bit of an insight into you and who you are and just how community has impacted you as you grow your business. So I'm going to kind of start out with this first question. I mean, Jolene and I both know you already, so this won't be anything too new for us, I don't think. Maybe it will, actually. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, and what sparked your idea to start your business?
Okay, well, my background is I spent, dare I say, 40 plus years, I haven't counted lately, in the human resources field in corporate. And all but the last probably 5 years of that was in public sector. So, county government, county Office of Education. And it's kind of been funny because each time I felt like I was starting over again because the fields, even though they were all government, they were still so different.
Right.
That type of thing. Then I actually retired and I was retired for 2 years. And then I went back to work for about 5 years. And when I went back, I went into the casino industry, which again, completely different industry, learning things all over again. So that's kind of my background. And the funny thing is that I've laughed before is because when I was in college way back in the day, and at the time I wanted to go into special education, and they did not have then, I mean, it's grown immensely since, but then they didn't really have a lot in that field, and everything was geared towards counseling. And I was like, I don't want to counsel. I don't want to counsel. And yet that's kind of what I did in human resources. And even now as a coach, is, not counseling per se, but it's all related.
Absolutely.
And so I've laughed about that multiple times to myself when I've thought about it and told my story, because not wanting to go into counseling and yet kind of ended up, there's a little bit of that, in human resources, and it then fed nicely into becoming a coach. So
I love that. So tell us a little bit about Sandy Bartlett Coaching.
I work with women on, I'm a women's empowerment and confidence coach, and I work with women on building their confidence. It really, there's so many components and facets of confidence that it covers such a broad range. And so it's really, I really tailor to the woman that I'm working with, but really focusing on self-acceptance and self-love and using your voice, with confidence, because the reality is, from my perspective anyway, is that when you have that mindset and because when you accept yourself and you are comfortable in your own skin, as it were, everything else kind of falls in place. It's interesting because my group on Facebook, Mindful Confidence for Women, one of the questions I ask is, what is your biggest challenge with confidence? And largely, a large number of the women talk about not being comfortable in how they look. It's largely related to appearance, and whether it's, size or age or any number of things. And so that's how I kind of got more into the self-acceptance, self-love. I'm not an advocate of diets. The first three letters of the word diet is die. And so,
Oh, I love
so
that.
I don't like that. I'm not a proponent of any, and I'm not saying it's bad, because honestly, you have to do what works for you. I have friends that have been super successful Weight Watchers and they love it. Great, go for it. I know people that have done really well on, you name it, any kind of diet. Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem. I forget the name of the
So
one.
many out there.
Really,
Yeah.
there's so many of them. Great, do what works for you. I am not a proponent of, for me personally, restricting, because I feel like too many times there's this mindset. Again, it goes back to mindset, but there's a mindset of, okay, well, I'm going to get to this point and then I'm all done. And then you go back to doing exactly what you did before, and then you go right back to it. So there's never an end. So it's really about developing those healthy habits and that healthy lifestyle. And however that works for each individual woman, great, go for it.
I love
and if you don't want to do it, that's okay too.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Yeah.
Sandy, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. It's just a little bit of fun. I'm going to ask you a quick question. Do not overthink it, which I know I overthought these questions and I helped Kelly write them. So first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Okay. All right.
Perfect. Okay. So what is the best thing about having your own business?
Freedom.
Freedom. Good
Being
answer.
able to do it wherever you want, whenever you want, setting your own schedule.
Love that. And what's the hardest thing about having your own business?
Honestly, sometimes I would say it's the same thing. It's because you do have that freedom. It's like opposite ends of the spectrum. You have the freedom to be able to do what you want when you want, but you also need to have that focus, to be able to know when you need to buckle down. And,
Absolutely.
Opposite.
Very good.
Two extremes of the same thing.
And you already answered this for us, but just in short, who does your business help?
Who does my what?
Who does your company and your business help?
Oh, I'm sorry. Women.
Yeah.
Overburdened, overexhausted women who are basically trying to please everybody but themselves. Everybody else comes first.
Nice.
So it's about, you can't, I say all the time, can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill your cup first.
Right.
So
can you describe yourself in 5 words?
Loyal, compassionate, honest.
I love that. People are so good at coming up with the first 3, but past 3, it's a stutter, right? Like it's always so quiet after the 3rd one.
Gosh, I'm like stumped. And I think why you're easy to come up with the first 3, because most of the questions people ask are 3 words.
Yeah, I
So
know
you
that's
most people have those three right off the top of their head.
yeah.
Then you go beyond that, you know.
We want to go deeper
Yeah.
than the
I
first three you
know.
had right now.
But I really
Yeah,
want to
I
throw
just
one out
went
there
blank.
because I really think that your confidence shines through. So you're very confident. So that's a great word
Oh,
for Sandy,
and
if
that's
you
so
ask.
funny that I didn't say that when I when I coach on it.
Just trying to throw you a bone here, Sandy. In what
What was
location
that?
are you the most productive?
I mean, physical location?
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Yeah.
I would say it's funny. It's changed because I would say when I was working full time, I had my best thoughts driving to work and honestly in the shower, which I think most people do.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way to, because I can't
Transition.
write when I'm either place. Now, um, it's it's either sitting in my office, which I do my obviously I do my work at sitting there. But honestly, it's when we're driving around. My husband's driving, and we're driving around, and my mind is going,
I
and
love
I'll
that.
pull out my phone and start in my I have so many notes in my notes section on my phone because that's where I keep track of things, and then I have to go back and try to find them and try to organize them.
At
So
least you're keeping track of them, not trying to remember them for later, right? At what time of the day do you get the best work done?
in the early morning.
In the early morning?
I typically, well, I've been sleeping in a little bit later because it's so cold here, but it was 25 when I got up this morning. But in the morning, I typically have a couple of hours, at least an hour, sometimes two, before my husband gets up. And so
Nice.
that's actually, actually, I don't sit at my desk for that. I have my spare room. I have a little meditation area set up, and I go in there and I meditate and do my whole morning routine. My meditation, my tapping, my journaling, listening to, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast, and that just gets my day going.
I love that. A good morning routine is so, so, so important. And then my final question is, what is, and it can be anywhere online, but what is your favorite online community and why?
Oh gosh, Facebook, I would say that's where I'm at the most.
Yeah.
And it's, I think probably because it's comfortable, because I've been on there the longest. I have a group on Facebook, but also on my personal page, connecting with my friends. I get more interaction there. I mean, I'm on all the different platforms, but I spend the most time on Facebook.
Nice. I like that. And what was the
Just
name of your Facebook community group again?
Mindful Confidence for Women.
I was just about to
And
say,
I
correct.
actually I've had men try to join the group. So even though it
That's
says
funny
for
why we
women,
do that.
in the
Yeah.
title.
Oh, so funny. Okay, so I know you come from the corporate world, and I know you have a long history in that kind of industry, and you've taken a lot of what you learned from there and brought it into your own business, and you've been in HR for a very long time. So my question is kind of odd to ask, but I'm curious to know is working with women and being an empowerment coach and helping women find their own confidence something that you've always kind of felt a pull towards, something you've always wanted to do?
No, actually, when I first was going to not the first time I retired, but the second time when I was going to retire, I actually was planning to do consulting,
Okay.
corporate consulting, and I had talked to my husband about it, and he was all for it, but I told him, I said, I want to do this the right way. I want to do my research. I want to do my homework. I want to, learn what I need to do before just diving into it. And through that process, is when I started doing the certification to become a health and life coach. I actually had already received a certification as a health coach, but I wanted the life coach piece, and mostly because I thought that would help with the consulting in terms of working with people. The program that I chose was a dual certification, health and life, and my husband didn't really understand that at first. He's like, well, but I thought you wanted to be a consultant. And I was like, well, I do, but if I look at it this way, I can expand and do corporate wellness programs, and that type of thing. So, and he was fine with that. And so I started the certification. And the program I chose, you had to go through the health coach certification first, then you got the access to the life coach part. So I did all that. And it was through that, and it was a great program from the standpoint of being able to do practice. They had you do practice clients. You did skills labs working with other coaches you'd learn a lesson, do a technique or whatever, then you got to practice it. But through that, and then going on to get my, because I went on and got a mastery certification in transformation and also transformational coaching. So I have 4 certifications. But through that and working through that is how I switched. Became, okay, I moved kind of away from the corporate part and started the one-on-one. And it really, they say you're your own ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
Your ideal client is just a past version of you. And that's, in my case, I mean, that is really true. I went up just to, when I retired the first time, I was executive director of human resources for the Orange County Department of Education. When I went back to work after retiring, I went back to work. I started out as an HR manager, and then I went to a different casino, and I retired there as their director of HR. And I love human resources, and I'm good at it, and I have a lot to offer. But I also, at the same time, felt, for lack of a better description, I just felt shut down sometimes. Like I felt like I had to work harder as a woman to be heard.
Yeah.
And to get my ideas across, or have them. And it's interesting because last night I don't know if you're familiar with human design at all, but I had found an app, and I was reading through my human design qualities, and it was so uncanny how it described me so perfectly. and that was one of the areas that it talked about, was not being heard, and having to really work harder to have your ideas heard. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it does. Can be very outspoken. It depends on the circumstances. I mean, I'm basically a shy person, and nobody believes that when I say that. But because I can stand up in front of a group, and I can train, I've been on stages, I can do all of that. But you put me in a social situation, and I'm the person sitting over on the wall, taking it all in, listening. And, I don't jump in, I don't draw a lot of attention to myself. If asked, I will share, kind of thing. Absolutely. So trying to find that balance is difficult. And I think because as women, we are raised, and some people may not agree with this, but I believe we are raised differently than men.
Absolutely.
And we're the ones that we're supposed to stay home and take care of everybody else, and take care of of everything. And even working, I talk to so many women that they work full time, their mom's full time, they're trying to fit it all in, and they're exhausted, trying to do it all, and they don't always get a lot of help at home.
I think you're 100% right on that. And but I do also think it's a generational thing. I would love to see
Yes.
that, the next generation, where are these women at our age when they're in their 40s or older? Do they have that confidence that a lot of us right now at this age group do strongly lack because of the way we were raised? That you do not speak up, you do not be in the room. Yeah, I'm the same way. I can relate with you a lot on the I'm a shy person. My husband thinks I'm a social butterfly, but you really have to dig deep to get me to come out of my shell. And one of those things is I feel way more comfortable on a stage in front of 1,000 people than I do in front of a single camera. So I feel that, and I think a lot of women need you and can feel that and can 100% relate to everything you just said.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's funny that you guys say that because I also would consider myself a shy person in social settings for sure. And I always get the same kind of response of, no, you're not. It's like, you don't know what I'm feeling in those situations.
Exactly.
Just because I step out of it doesn't mean I don't feel it. And for me, like, I'm the exact opposite of what you guys are saying. I mean, I can sing on a stage in front of thousands of people, but I don't want to stand and talk on a stage in front of thousands of people. But in a smaller group setting, I'm way more comfortable. So I think, we all have our places that we just feel at peace and at home, and then we all have to step out of those places. And how do we approach that when it happens? Because if we don't take the chance, we hold ourselves back in some fashion. So how do we approach it, and how do we move past it? And that's what you're helping women do. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I could empty the room real quick. If I were to go on stage and started talking to 1,000 people, it'd be great, entertaining. But the minute I start singing, it's cleared out. So,
Totally.
Yeah, it's funny because even with my closest friends, like one-on-one, we'll talk, but in a group, I don't talk as much. I sit and listen, and I don't know. Sometimes I think it's weird. I mean, once you get to know me, I mean, we'll talk more, and the shyness goes away, but I'm much better one-on-one than even those, even like I said, even among friends. I'm the loyal friend for life, kind of thing. But even in a group, and I have a couple of different, female groups that we do go places together and weekends and that type of thing, but I don't say a whole lot. So.
Love it. So I'm curious, as I know that you're, you just recently retired for the second and final time, right? And you're focusing on, figuring out how you're going to format your business and how you're going to grow it. And so I'm curious how you're going about creating your own unique business strategy.
Oh, trying all kinds of different things. I have a coach that I'm working with, and I don't necessarily agree or want to do all those things. It's really trying different things. Ultimately, it's just like diets. Whatever works for one person isn't going to necessarily work for every single person.
Yeah.
The same goes with business strategy. Different strategies are going to work for different people. So trying different things, and I'm still trying to figure out like what feels the best for me. Trying to get on camera more, because visibility, is important. But it's trying a lot of different things, being in different communities. I've worked with multiple different coaches. I've done different types of programs. I take advantage of trainings. I find I'm like, I'll see something, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll do it, and then I'm like, yeah, not so much. Sometimes I'll try it, sometimes not. So it's just trying different things. I'm in an accountability group with a couple other coaches, and so bouncing ideas off of them I'm in the mastermind that you all facilitate. And, so, and what I love about that group is the fact that we're all from different, different industries. We all kind of have a commonality, but we're all from different industries and different age groups and the whole bit. And I love the input that we get and being able to bounce those ideas off. I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Right.
So I think really being in community, not only in the masterminds and the accountabilities, facing in different groups. There's all sorts of different groups, both Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those. But it's just being open to learning, all those different things and trying different things and really seeing what really works.
I really like
ultimately
that.
Doing what's best for you.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. A lot of people will go and follow and find gurus that tell them this is what you do. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, to be like me and to be, super successful. And I am so happy for those who that worked for. But I think it's so scary for how many people feel that they need to follow a specific path. And they won't find that success until they follow their own path and what works for them. So that's kind of the most unique strategy out there, if you ask. I know that you talked a lot about communities and being a part of masterminds and all of these things, but I don't know. And this could be my ignorance on what you do. And I feel that sometimes when you're looking at an empowerment coach and a confidence coach, it can be a very singular type industry and a very, solopreneur thing, whereas opposed you don't have such a wide community. So that is probably a myth or a misunderstanding I have about empowerment coaching and, coaching in general when it comes to confidence and helping myself. So what would another common myth be about your field and your industry?
That coaching is the same thing as therapy or counseling or something like that, because they're really not. They and I think most people don't really understand what a coach does.
Right.
And so I heard it described one time, and I thought it was a beautiful way to describe it, is that a therapist is more like an archaeologist, and where a coach is more like more like architecture, where a therapist, you're digging into the past. Archaeology is digging the past, and where coaching is looking more towards the future. Not that you don't touch on some of those past areas, but you're really looking at what is it you want to do moving forward. Often, and how I was trained, and I'm guessing others as well. But as we coach, we're looking at, okay, well, tell me about where you're at right now. What are your pain points, and what would you like instead? And
Right.
then you go into, okay, so what's stopping you from getting there, and then helping them get to that. My current coach talks about pain island and pleasure island. So how do we get you away from pain island and get you to pleasure island, and get, to move you in that direction? And it's really more, asking a lot of questions. Therapists, I believe, do as well. But you're working together in partnership.
Yes.
And asking those questions to help them get at, that core, because ultimately, and it was interesting. I was just talking with a coach friend yesterday, talking through some things, and so I was trying to help remind her, because it's hard when this was related to a family situation. It's like, still have to stay in the ask mode. And that's what I used to tell supervisors and managers all the time: stay in the ask mode, because when you start telling people what to do, they don't own it. If you stay in the ask mode, whether it's as a supervisor, manager, coach, whatever, as soon as when you ask them a question and they give you that answer, they own it.
They own it.
and
That is
they
great.
buy into it. And so you know, in this case, when I was talking to her yesterday, it's like the individual that we were talking about, you know, she's kind of in a victim mode, and she was telling her what she should do. And I'm like, okay, you're letting her stay in that victim mode. So ask her questions so that she, you know, you can ask the questions to this point that you're helping to guide them, you know, in certain directions without telling them what to do, because so that she owns, you know, that path and where she wants to go, because ultimately she has to make that decision. I can't, as a coach, I can't do it for you. I can only offer suggestions. I can, you know, ask questions. I can, but, you know, to help you get to that where you want to go. And, you know, we have all kinds of tools in our toolbox to help us, you know, come up with those types of things.
I love that. Well, Pleasure Island to me is definitely just a plane ride away, but I like that that analogy of architecture versus, you know, archaeology. Like that is a new one for me, and it is so deep and so true to form when it comes to coaching. So thank you very much for that. I might steal it because it is so good.
Go ahead.
You signed the waiver, right?
I did.
No, I love that too. That's great. So, Sandy, what would you say was your biggest obstacle when you first started your business?
I would say it still is getting out of my own way. Fear, you know, fear is a big factor in a lot of things, but I think, you know, it's still, even like, you know, Jolene, you talked about, you know, not wanting to be on camera. I don't either, you know,
Yeah.
I'm working on it, but, you know, it's the fear and the whole, you know, you may have heard the term imposter syndrome, you know, like people like, well, why would anybody listen to me? Who am I to, you know, but the reality is, not only do I have the certifications because I went through all the training, I also have life experiences, and all of those together, you know, and I mean, one of the things that I've talked with, you know, my coaches about is the fact that I feel like sometimes, like, I don't have this big, you know, aha story moment, whatever you want to call it, where I had this big, like, something happened and it was like, and it was a turning point for me. I don't have that, you know, and what they've reminded me of is that not everybody does, you know, and so people are going to relate to you in different ways. And so, and that's what I have to continually remind myself. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, is that imposter syndrome / fear of, you know, why would anybody listen to me?
That's a big, big one. And honestly, I think you have repeated and shown to me that there's no better way to learn how to love who you are, love yourself, and become confident in your own skin and your own decisions than by learning from somebody who has had to go through it themselves. Because honestly, if I personally were to go to a confidence coach, I probably would struggle going to somebody who has been confident since the day they were born. And you know those people sometimes, but sometimes they've just grown to become who they are. So I think your story is so important and so valuable to what you do and who you help. And that being said, with your story, what advice would you give for women just starting out in your industry, for women who are looking to become confidence coaches? What kind of advice would you give them?
Forgive yourself.
Oh,
And because I think, and when I say forgive yourself, it's like we're all going to make mistakes. None of us is perfect. And so being willing to try different things, being willing to go out on a limb, if you will, and to do that, realize that you're not going to do it perfect every time.
right.
I mean, I I consider myself a lifelong learner. And so, I like to learn a lot of, different things and, and try a lot of different things. And so be willing to do that, be willing to explore, and probably the other thing I would say is get yourself a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, that people like, and I see it all the time in the alumni group for my coaching school. People get frustrated because I think they go into it with this idea that, okay, well, I'm a coach now, and, hang up my shingle or whatever. And, but you still have to put in the work. You have to put in the work to do the things, to build your business, to do the marketing, and, be that one woman show or one man show, whatever the case may be, so be willing to do that. You're going to have to invest in yourself, which honestly, that's part of what, being a confidence coach and coaching women on, because most women don't want to, they'll spend money on their hair, their nails, their clothes, their whatever. But those, I think they look at as necessities, but they don't necessarily, feel like, well, I can't spend that kind of money, on coaching for myself. They look at it as a luxury, and the reality is it's a necessity as well.
Kelly, are you seeing a common thread here? We have talked about this in the past on how so many women that are starting out in business, whether they were doing it solo with a partner or have an entourage, the investing in themselves seems to be the one thing that they're not willing to throw the money into. They will take all the certifications. They will buy all of the big trendy tech tools and websites and invest, thousands onto the website. But when it comes to investing back into themselves, that seems to be a common thread with everyone. Just it's like, oh, no, I can't do that because something else is more important. And that just doesn't seem to be the case, does it?
Well,
but you're right. Yeah, that's a very common thread.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, how many men do you know that if they don't go and, oh, I need to check, I need to do whatever, they just go do it. They just spend the money. They have the confidence in themselves or whatever you want to call it, and they just go do it. When you talk to a woman, oh, well, let me go talk to my husband first. They have to ask permission, or whoever they're going to talk to. But, they have to feel like they have to ask permission. Most men don't ask permission. They just do it. But as women, we feel like we need to ask permission.
And again, I want to look at it 2-3 generations from now. Where are those ladies sitting? That is definitely something I want to see.
Yep, I agree.
So there's a specific question that we're asking everyone, being that we're particularly focused on the aspect of community in solopreneurship and how it impacts and supports you as you grow and find your success. So looking back on your business up till this point, how can you see your community helping you get to where you are and where you're heading towards and where you want to go?
I think it kind of depends on the community. I'm part of multiple different communities, and they all serve a different purpose.
Love that.
And yet they all have somewhat of a commonality. I have a community of, I am a sorority woman, and so I have a community of sorority sisters and some that I'm closer to than others, but and we have like text groups. And so I know I can go to them at any time to bounce things off of, or for encouragement or support or whatever it is I need. I have my coaching community, and, I might go to them a little bit, maybe more for business advice or that type of thing. I go to different communities for different things. The alumni from my school, my friends, my high school. I think it just depends on the community, and what it is that I need at the time.
Right.
It will depend on which community I go to. in any of those communities, I would be looking for support, encouragement, bouncing ideas off of, sometimes validation. You know, I mean, my accountability group, I had a situation where I shared a post on something with them. I'm like, how would you react to this? You know, because it triggered me. And they kind of had they actually had a stronger reaction than I did. but I felt validated,
Yeah.
And so sometimes you need that, you need that validation. So it's different communities for different things, even though sometimes there's a common thread running through all of them.
I really, really love that, because it's so important that we talk about community and how community helps you with your success. I mean, the podcast name is Success Through Community, but to narrow it down to a single community for any person is probably not going to be the best way to do it. I mean, I know that Kelly is a part of multiple communities. I'm part of multiple communities, and there's like you said, the coaching community and church communities and just industry specific. And I think that that's a huge, huge part of community, and being able to recognize that one community is not going to rule them all in order for you to move forward and grow, right? That's huge, huge. So where can our listeners follow you and find you online? I know that I'm a part of your Facebook group, which I love, because being a Canadian, I'm very apologetic, and you have taught me so much about not apologizing for every little thing. And every time I go to say sorry, you pop in my head, and I'm thinking of you, and I'm like, she's got me going. So I think it's so great. So I think a lot of our listeners would love to know where they can find you online. So please share.
Well, the places that I'm at most often would be in my group on Facebook, which is Mindful Confidence for Women. I'm also on Instagram, and I can't remember the handle. I think it's the Sandy Bartlett. I think that's.
We'll put it in the show notes, so you don't have to be right now.
My Facebook profile is Sandy Shaddix Bartlett, which sometimes people just put in Sandy Bartlett, and there's other Sandy Bartletts out there. So my maiden name is in there. But Facebook and Instagram is where I'm probably the most active. And so those would be the best places. And then my website, which is www.thesandybartlett.com.
Love that. Like Kelly said, we'll put that all in the show notes for everybody. So you don't have to worry about finding her handle. I don't know my handle either. I know everybody I follow, but mine not so much, because I'm not on Instagram as much.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this and spending your morning with us. We appreciate you coming. And I had fun. Like, I learned so much.
Absolutely.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it. I was excited to be able to be on your show with you.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on the Success Through Community podcast,
where our goal is to support female solopreneurs through community.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, make sure you check out the show notes for links, transcripts, and so much more.
And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to the podcast.
Ooh, and don't forget to mention us to your community.
And if you can't wait for the next episode, be sure to join us on Patreon,
where our community is made possible by listeners like you. So thank you so much for your support.
Until next time.